afternoon in June last year.
Look, you know what? This thing has changed so many times. I'm just reading what you want me to read.
A titan of Wall Street prepares to address his staff in New York, London, and around the world. He wants to put an end to rumors that the firm is in trouble. Crisis? What crisis?
Every one of you should feel confident and proud. Our firm is strong today, and we will emerge from this cycle even stronger. We've done it before, and we will do it again.
12 weeks later, the bank went bust.
Lehman Brothers suffering a spectacular downfall. Its stock at one point this year sold for...
This is the inside account of what caused a Wall Street giant to collapse.
This is really stupendous. This has happened.
I think in the history of business in the last 50 years, it was the most extraordinary weekend there's been.
It was the biggest bankruptcy in history and the tipping point into global recession.
Lehman's was a seminal moment in the sense that it illustrated these two big problems that if we didn't solve, things would get a huge amount worse.
The panic that followed hurt us all as mortgages dried up, stock markets tumbled, and businesses went to the wall. So why did one bankruptcy have such catastrophic consequences for the world?
I don't think any of us easily anticipated that we would see the sort of financial panic that we saw after the failure of Lehman Brothers. So this has been an extraordinarily serious set of events.
We did not have those tools coming into the crisis, and I think that was a tragic mistake for the United States and for the rest of the world.
This is what really happened at the tipping point of the crash in 2008. Those who were there on the inside tell the story of the weekend that changed the world. When America's Treasury Secretary arrived in New York a year ago this week, he faced a dilemma. Hank Paulson, the man in charge of US economic policy, had flown up from Washington because Lehman Brothers, one of Wall Street's oldest investment banks, was hemorrhaging money. Should he keep it alive with a cash injection or let the markets take their course? And if he let it go bust, what would be the consequences for the global economy? With only an hour's notice, he summoned the chief executives of America's leading banks, the so-called masters of the universe, to a crisis meeting.
So it was Friday afternoon. I was in Merrill's Midtown offices. It was raining quite hard. I got a phone call at 5 p.m., be at the Fed at 6 p.m. this evening. Those type of phone calls are always bad.
And this was just about as bad as it gets.
And I think it was me who used the word Armageddon. This is going to be Armageddon.
The Fed, the New York Federal Reserve, the stage on which the crisis played out, is around the corner from Wall Street. The granite fortress is a symbol of American economic might.
I don't think there was a person there who didn't understand, at least to a large extent, the stakes we were playing for.
We had a conference room there. I have been told that the chief executives of most of the Wall Street firms were there as well, but apparently it was another floor and other conference rooms.
We trying to do our part, to do what was being asked of us, and with a sense of the clock ticking.
I'll probably never have a weekend quite like it.
Lehman may post another $2.5 billion write-down on home loans in the third quarter.
For months, Wall Street had been worried about Lehman's because of the bank's massive property investments. With the crash in the market, it was now dangerously exposed. Shareholders were dumping stock, and other banks were withholding credit.
Lehman has lost $6.5 billion so far this year.
The bank's share price had been dropping since May.
Lehman shares have been down sharply.
But in the last 10 days, it had been in free fall. By that Friday afternoon, it was losing more than $8 million a minute. Confidence in the bank was evaporating under the glare of the media spotlight.
Has the market given up on Lehman?
We knew Lehman's was in trouble. Remember that there's a constant traffic between our Treasury and the US Treasury, between the regulators, and during that time I spoke to Hank Paulson pretty regularly. And on the Friday evening, we knew that they would have to do something about Lehman's.
In the last few months, the fallout from the subprime mortgage crisis and the collapse in house prices had forced the US Treasury to bail out one bank and America's two biggest mortgage companies. Many assume the authorities will do the same again. But the presidential election was weeks away. On the campaign trail, the cry went out, it's Main Street, not Wall Street, that matters. So when the bank chiefs assembled that Friday evening, it was clear from the start there'd be little sympathy from the government.
It was really Hank Paulson, the Treasury Secretary, and Tim Geithner, the head of the New York Fed, who really were running the meeting. And they said to us, this is the problem. Lehman needs to be rescued. You have to come up with a solution. We, the government, are not going to help.
As the leaders of Wall Street wrestled with what to do about Lehman Brothers, across town at Shea Stadium, the home team, the Mets, were trailing to the Atlanta Braves. It was not a good omen. With no government bailout, two of Lehman's rivals were eager to swoop. The first was Bank of America, one of the largest banks in the United States. And the other was a British outsider, Barclays, keen to expand across the Atlantic.
We had our eyes open. We had a good opportunity of taking a very careful look at the books. We deployed a big team in New York under Bob Diamond.
We certainly didn't know what we were going to find completely in due diligence, but I can tell you for sure we wouldn't have boarded the plane in a situation as serious as the markets we're in if we weren't very serious.
It was very clear that this was going to be a seminal event in the history of the credit crunch.
Few ever imagined that America's fourth largest investment bank would fall so far and so fast. Its earlier success was largely down to one man, a larger-than-life figure, who was proud to call himself a Lehman lifer. In 1966, 20-year-old Richard Severin Fuld Jr. arrived in New York to work as an intern at Lehman Brothers. When he finished university, the bank snapped him up. Dick Fuld was driven and good at what he did. Very good. Steadily and determinedly, he worked his way up to the top. In 1993, he was appointed chief executive. Under him, Lehman's evolved and grew from a traditional investment bank, raising money and managing mergers and acquisitions for clients, to using borrowed money to play the markets itself.
I must tell you, having been with Lehman Brothers for 24 years, this is my only job. When I started off, I was lower than low, thinking that I would stand here today and to give this address to my people. I am thrilled.
The new boss had one simple ambition: to overtake his rivals, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, and Goldman Sachs.
Lehman Brothers will eventually inherit the heritage and the tradition that will let us stand alone and conquer all the people that stand in front of us. That's what I want Lehman Brothers to be. Basically to crush our enemies like this.
Dick Fuld was to become the longest-serving chief executive on Wall Street. He strode like a colossus through his domain, and his reputation preceded him.
Within the firm, he had godlike status. This was a man who was clearly in charge and clearly had a vision for the business. You know, would you want to get into an argument with Dick? Absolutely not, unless you were totally solid on the grounds you were arguing.
He wouldn't even acknowledge anybody. Most of the time, I would say good morning or hello to him, and you get a response back, but he's very, almost like he